Naughty. What is the best naughty historical fact you know? Story 1. William the Conqueror allegedly smashed his testicles on the pommel of his horse's saddle, which eventually killed him. But that's not the end of it. During his funeral ceremony, they had placed him in a stone coffin/sarcophagus thing. It was unusually hot that day and his body swelled. Well, the coffin did not. So during his funeral, where he died by smashing his nuts, his body exploded. The poor tyrant just couldn't be put into the ground fast enough. At the time, funerals and burials were usually arranged by people who loved the deceased. Unfortunately for the recently dead William, he wasn't too liked. He died campaigning against his own son, and nobody really wanted to put on his funeral. And so his dead and disgustingly fat body lay naked in a medical facility in Rouen for some time until some random knight took it upon himself to conduct the funeral. Little did he know when he took the task, but William was to be buried in Caen, which is about 70 miles away. So the knight decided to try to embalm the king himself, though I'm sure he winged most of it and found that most of his flesh and intestines were ripe with decomposition. The brave and iron-stomached knight then filled his body as much as he could with herbs and stuff and went about the leisurely boat ride down the Seine with a dead and bloated king. It gets worse. By the time they got to Caen, the intestines started to liquefy and filled the abdomen with putrid gas, and so a second embalming took place. And then a fire broke out in the city, stopping the funeral for a few days as he continued to stink and decompose even further. At this time, the body was swelling more each day as the flames were put out around the city and the monks could attend the burial. Finally, it was funeral time, right? Wrong. A legal dispute broke out over whether the church was built on the land of a local farmer. Bring in the 11th century lawyers. Fortunately, it was only about a week before they had decided that the church was legally built on the land and that William could be buried there. Good news for all, the bloated and liquefying body of William the Conqueror was finally getting a funeral. The monks started pushing him into his sarcophagus, and then they were about to put him into the ground. But wait, there's more. The gravediggers didn't make the hole big enough. Suspending the funeral to widen the hole would take a whole day. But it was a combination of the residual heat from the recent fires and the putrid stench coming from the body of William the Conqueror's body forced the monks, gravediggers, lawyers, iron-stomached knight, and a few nobles to take a calculated decision. Dig a wider hole or stuff the bastard, because he was called William the Bastard before Conqueror, get it? Into the hole. They shoved, he exploded. His guts, liquefied intestines and organs, blood, gray matter, and visceral fats shot over and covered everybody brave enough to call themselves attendants to the funeral of William of Normandy. Some say that this is no way to treat a dead body even by 11th century standards. Some say that he was a tyrant and treated everybody like crap, and so the honor and dignity of a respectful funeral isn't needed here. However, I say, albeit I'm just some dude, that this was one final F you to anybody around him. I think that on some level, William would have wanted to explode over everybody like that, because he was a cruel and spiteful person who generally regarded people beneath him. Good on him. He treated people in death exactly as he did in life, a burden who will ruin your day no matter how much you tried to help. Edit. I am fully prepared for the pro-am historians to peck holes into this stem of consciousness here. I'm too drunk to taste this chicken. This is the story that got me into European history. My history teacher was a miserable person, but she knew exactly what to do to get certain kids interested. I've got to say, I've got some wild funeral plans that involve my body being moved with animatronics during a pre-recorded tyrannical speech, then moved and filled with candy for the piñata portion of the party, and finally being cremated, mixed with wine, and drank in a ritual to summon my new perfect form. But now, all that kind of seems second-rate compared to this funeral. I'm going to have to work extra hard to top William. Story 2. After Nero, how can you have a naughty history thread without naming him, kicked his wife to death, he met a young boy named Sporus. According to some, Sporus held somewhat of a resemblance to Nero's late killed wife, Poppaea, and so Nero had the boy castrated and married him. During the marriage, they appeared in public as a happy couple as Nero paraded his new bride around to Greece and then back to Rome, where he had married another guy named Pythagoras, not the math guy. Nero called Pythagoras his husband and called Sporus his wife. Sporus was labeled the Empress. A lot of people think that Nero took to Sporus because of the guilt he felt for kicking his wife to death, as he even called Sporus Poppaea, the wife he kicked to death. Needless to say, Nero had issues and his classic naughty history. He ran the gamut of MFK with his mom, killed his wife, castrated boys who looked like his dead, murdered wife, and kept them around for his pleasure/guilt, married strong dudes, not that there's anything wrong with that, and ended up killing himself. I'm positive a lot of his history is propaganda, and I recognize how mental illness still goes diagnosed in today's world, not to mention the ancient world. Also, trying to look through the anti-Nero and revisions to find the truth is supremely challenging, but damn, that crap is effed. Most likely, he didn't kick her to death. That was a rumor started by the patrician class who despised him. She most likely died from complications of miscarriage. The lower class folks loved him, most likely. Hard to separate what is true and what are rumors that became the history with any person, let alone an extreme situation like Nero. I've got to say, I always knew Nero was a little, but I had no idea it was possibly to this extent. I feel like I need more Nero facts or rumors. Story 3. The ancient city of Alexandria had one of the most famous red light districts brothels in the world. Once the prostitutes went on a strike and the economy of the city was at risk, so Cleopatra consulted one of the wise men in the library, and he suggested that they build another district as a competitor. Then they had 2 districts, and the prostitutes of the district had to end their strike. "Oh, wise man, the wenches aren't working and we're in financial ruin. Whatever shall we do?" Smashes scrying bowl on the floor. More effing W's. If only they narrated history like that. Story 4. In ancient Greece, prostitutes used to press "follow me" into their sandals so that when they walked, it would imprint into the dirt or sand. So when people saw it, they know that they could follow the trail and it would end in a prostitute, and maybe some intercourse. There's a sculpture I love called the Slipper Slapper that shows Aphrodite and Pan, and she is, edit my bad, this is not true, holding a sandal with "follow me" on the bottom. Big edit, sorry, I appear to have misunderstood a professor and then didn't follow up before posting. The Slipper Slapper is a beautiful sculpture but does not have "follow me" studded on the bottom in Greek. My bad for not researching the statue more before posting. Ancient F me shoes, when the "nice shoes wanna F" pickup line actually worked. Story 5. Don't know if it's true, but my history teacher told me about this one prostitute that got out of dying or something by showing the judges her boobs, claiming it would be against gods to destroy something so beautiful. According to the story I heard, that was in ancient Greece, which believed beauty was an indicator of virtue. Thus, her defense rested on being so beautiful she was obviously too virtuous to commit the crime. Edit, fix spelling. If I remember correctly, she was on trial for blasphemy or something akin. I know this is a naughty thread, but I didn't expect 3 prostitute stories in a row. Way to go, intercourse workers, for keeping history interesting. Story 6. Fath-Ali Shah Qajar, second king in Qajar dynasty in Iran about 200 years ago, had 160 wives. Nasruddin Shah Oir had about 50. In Islam, you're not allowed to marry more than 4 wives at the same time. It is said that Nasruddin Shah was once walking in his palace and saw a beautiful girl and asked if he could marry her. Everyone was looking at him weirdly and he asked why. One of his servants said that she was his daughter. But did he marry her? Gladly, no. I can't bear the fact that he had so many wives, don't want to add incest to it. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 7. St. Lawrence was martyred on a gridiron. His last words were, "I'm well done on this side, turn me over." He's now the patron saint of cooks and comedians. I'm not making any of this up. God damn, that is legendary. Literally. God, I love anyone in history who has the gusto to have amazing last words. This is still second to my favorite, which is where Voltaire was asked if he would renounce the devil, and he said, "This is no time to be making new enemies." Story 8. Roman Emperor Commodus had a harem of 300 women and men and spent most of his time there. If you had a harem that size, you'd do the same. Trust me, you'd find a spot to hide away from the harem after 2 years. Story 9. The first vibrating toy was diesel-powered. What's that noise? Oh, nothing. Just my wife's treatment for hysteria. Story 10. Belarus, World War II. A high-ranking Nazi official had a brothel/concubine set up. Obviously, not consensual. Well, some of the ladies didn't like the situation and did not like Nazis. So they put a landmine under his mattress. I call it the Belarusian space program. Still safer as a space program than my death trap machine I make in KSP. Who needs symmetry when you can have even more acceleration? Story 11. Not so much historically as biblical. According to the Bible, right when Jesus is getting arrested by the Romans, a random, unnamed naked guy just runs past everyone. He is never mentioned again and is unknown why they even put it in the Bible. It's Mark 14:51-52 if you want to check it out. He's probably going to be a key character in the Second Coming. It's one of those Chekhov's gun things. So the Coney guy was actually onto something? That was Jesus' friend from college, Randy. Guy was always messing around. Sadly, he got a DUI, so he couldn't make it to the Last Supper. Story 12. Mathematician Kurt Gödel suffered from mental illness and was paranoid he was going to be poisoned. He would only eat food his wife had prepared for him. In 1977, she was hospitalized for 6 months and could no longer prepare his food. In her absence, he refused to eat and eventually starved to death. He only weighed 65 pounds when he died. He couldn't have made himself a goddamn sandwich? You fool! What if he poisoned his food? Story 13. A merkin is a replacement wig for pubic hairs prostitutes used to use after they shaved theirs due to pubic lice. Merkins are regularly used in cinema. For some reason, it's more acceptable to show fake pubic hair than the real deal. Probably the actress does not want to go full frontal. I thought it was for historical accuracy, as women today tend to shave more than in the past. Story 14. George Washington in his youth was a handsome, strapping young man that all the women and officers' wives wanted to screw. Our founding father was a bit of a poonhound. I heard he had like 30 goddamn adult films. Had a pocket full of horses. Story 15. 18th century Empress of Russia Catherine the Great employed foot ticklers to turn her on. Her furniture had actual peas on it. Carved furniture peas. A lady I can respect for that, if nothing else. Define actual. Get a couple loose dongs and just nail them to the furniture, or stuff them in a pillow. Adds that extra cushion not even Goose Down can offer. Story 16. The one about Gandhi regularly group bathing, group sleeping/cuddling, and getting strip teases and lap dances from really young women. One of which was his grand or great-grand, I can't recall, niece to test his intimate restraint or whatever. LOL, Gandhi was a huge crap. That's why he nukes everybody. Story 17. In the war for Texas independence against Mexico after the Battle of the Alamo, there was this Mexican woman who was a spy for Texas, nicknamed the Yellow Rose of Texas. She went and seduced the Mexican General Santa Anna, and while they were hooking up, the Texans did a surprise attack and slaughtered many Mexicans and won the war. Probably got some facts wrong, LOL. What the F? They didn't teach me this in 4th grade Texas history. I was told that he was just sleeping. Story 18. Hitler had the hots for his niece, Gyli Raubel, 17 to 23 years old, who was found dead in her bedroom after she shot herself in the chest with his own gun, noting the fact that she lived with him until 1931. There are a lot of controversial aspects to that story, but also a lot of interesting pieces of information. Some historians speculate that they had a bizarre relationship and that probably she was the love of his life. He mourned her death for a week locked in her bedroom, denied food, and wanted to kill himself. After that, he kept her room as a shrine and kept her memories with him until near his death. So weird when banging your underage niece isn't the worst thing you did in life. To be honest, I'm starting to think this Hitler guy might not be so great. Yeah, wow, just when I thought I couldn't dislike Hitler any more than I already did, I learned this. You think a guy can't get any worse, but I guess Hitler managed to find a way. Story 19. In 2017, Oscar Wilde was among an estimated 50,000 men who were pardoned for homoerotic acts that were no longer considered offenses under the Policing and Crime Act 2017. The act is known informally as the Alan Turing Law. Not that it matters to Mr. Wilde now, but 130 years is a long time to wait to have your name cleared. To which Mr. Wilde probably would have blithely quipped, better to have been infamous than not. Ottoman Padishah Selim II died by stepping on soap and falling while chasing girls in his harem. At least his last memory was looking at bodacious bouncing buttocks and bouncing bombastic breasts.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.